Welcome back to MR Fishing Ohio. Today I'm going to be talking about a slightly controversial topic in the world of fishing, and that is bait casting reels, specifically left-handed versus right-handed. Now, there are two schools of thought when it comes to this, and that is what you should be using. Is that a right-handed or a left-handed? Now, it's a little confusing because if you look at a professional bass fisherman's boat, most of them are right-handed, just as most people are right-handed, and most of their reels are going to have the handle on the right-hand side, like this one I have here. This is a 8 gear ratio Summit Hawk reel from Ardent. This is a reel I just got, and I got it specifically for frog fishing. This is the only right-handed reel that I use. I'm going to explain why. The other side of things are left-handed reels, and this one is a 6 gear ratio left-handed reel. The Apex Elite. It's one of my favorite reels all around. I have 3 of them, and I use them for a variety of different baits. Now, I am right-handed, but I prefer to use a left-handed bait caster. Now, you might be questioning, well, why is that when I use the right-handed? Now, it all comes down to me 2 things: efficiency, but also power. When I'm using a spinning reel, the handle's on the left-handed side, and I don't need strength from reeling something in. I simply don't. And so it makes sense to me to have the pole in my right hand, where my strength is. I'm right-handed, my right arm is stronger. What doesn't make sense is if you look at a professional bass fisherman's boat, they have mostly right-handed reels. And that's not everybody. There's some guys that do have left-handed reels. You'll see them go out, they'll cast with their right hand and then switch the pole into their left hand and then retrieve. To me, it's a waste of time, for one. 2, it doesn't really make any sense that you're casting with one arm because that's your stronger arm, but then you're not using that to pull the fish. And it's never made any sense when I was growing up. It was always confusing to me, because then if you look in that same person's boat, most of them, their spinning reels, the reel would be on the left-handed side. I never got why that would be, and a lot of it had to do with manufacturers. They simply just didn't make a lot of left-handed bait casters, so it was something I wasn't really interested in growing up. But in the past, like 10 to 5 years, you've seen a lot more companies make bait casters with a left-handed retrieve. And I think partly is that because more people were like, oh, they exist, and they tried them out and prefer it. So you'll see a lot of people using them now, way more than it was probably over a decade ago. And to me, it just makes more sense. Now, a lot of old school people will say, well, the right-handed reel is better, and different lures, different opinions. Now, I just got into bait casting 3 years ago, and I have to say I much prefer to use a left-handed reel. Now, the interesting thing about that is I have a right-handed reel as well, and I have only one like that I use. Now, the reason for that is, for one, my reel sponsor, Ardent Reels, this is the highest gear ratio reel that they make, and this one only comes in a right-handed model, and I wanted it specifically for frog fishing. And another reason, that's the more important reason, is because they make other right-handed retrieve reels. That isn't really the reason why I specifically got this one. The reason is, my theory is that if you're tired fishing all day, constantly casting and then reeling in with the same thing, you're going to get tired. Your muscles are going to get kind of sore from doing the same motions all day. So my thought is that switching it up every now and then can help you rest that muscle that you're using. You're reeling like this, and then casting is not as big of a strain in my opinion. It's the reeling, and then the fighting an actual fish. But the lure, the actual cast, is usually a flick of the wrist. It's not really going to be a big tired event. I find I get much more sore from just the reeling motion. So switching to a right-hand retrieve every now and then kind of breaks the monotony. But I'll still fish with a left-handed retrieve 90% of the time, because that's just what makes sense. My strong arm is my right arm. I'm not going to put myself in a position where my weaker arm is doing the work and fighting back that fish. Reeling, I don't need to be strong to spin this. It doesn't require any strength. And very rarely in bass fishing do you have a fish where you can't reel it. Now, there could be arguments for like deep sea fishing or something like that where it might require you to use your right-handed reel, because that's what matters more is the cranking action. But I just don't see an application in any of the bass fishing I'm doing where it's like, oh, it's so important that I reel with my right hand. I just don't think it's really that important. So to me, it would make most sense to use the stronger parts of your body for the parts that require the strength. And that's where I kind of leave it. But it doesn't matter. Whatever you're used to, whatever works for you is what you should do. But don't just get right-handed reels because that's what you see other people doing. Try out what makes more sense to you. You might like right-handed reels better. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't have any problem throwing them. But if I'm going to make a choice, I'm going to choose a left-handed reel every time. So at the end of the day, you have to figure out what works for you. But try both. Don't just choose one because you see someone else using it. One of my friends, he's right-handed. He still prefers the reel on the right hand because that's what he learned on. It's hard to unlearn something and just switch. So if you've never gotten to bait casting and you're right-handed, try out a left-handed retrieve first. You're probably going to like it. But for those of you that have been using the right-hand retrieves, there's no reason to stop. It's what works for you. You've probably gotten used to it by now. But for new fishermen specifically, give a left-handed retrieve on a baitcaster a try.